So, are you ready to check out what we made? Boom! And wow, pretty nice designs out of the box. I think this is actually really cool too, the way that they did this. If you are sick and tired of your apps looking like they came out of a high school computer class, well then do I have good news for you. Because I'm about to break down a 2-step system that turns basic ideas into FANG level designs. And the best part is that it is predictable. Getting nice UIs used to feel like luck. But with this blueprint, you can force LLMs to give you professional designs every single time. An ugly UI will often kill your app before it even launches. And I'd venture to say that it's one of the biggest bottlenecks for vibe coders. That's why the second step that I'm going to show you, I call the design principles engine. And I spent dozens of hours researching the different pieces that go into this. And it's the secret ingredient that makes this process so dope. Because the biggest mistake I see when people prompt an AI to build them something is they'll say something like, make it beautiful. That's not going to do you much good. Instead, you need to show the system what you consider to be beautiful and codify that. A visual DNA, if you will. That's why our first phase is going to be inspiration mining. Meaning step 1 is to stop guessing and start mining what professional designs actually look like. Most people prompt blind, hoping for a miracle. So in the spirit of zigging while other people are zagging, we're just gonna not do that. Instead, we're gonna go build a visual mood board and then turn it into a token-based design system. That system is going to act as a non-negotiable guide in later steps. Now, I use a tool called Mobbin to do this. Long story short, they compile entire UI workflows and screens from large B2C consumer mobile and web apps. So we can come through, we can check out different screens like this. We could say, hey, we want to look at specific UI elements. We could say, hey, we want to look at entire flows, for example, an entire onboarding flow and what those look like. So a really great app for you to go through and mine inspiration from. So I recommend finding a few apps that you really love, things that catch your eye for one reason or another. Now, pro tip, get inspiration from outside of your app's category. So if you're building a news app, don't just go copy a news app. And so then once you've found some that you like, we're just going to go through and we're going to actually download those screens. So let's say I like Perplexity. We could come through here, click this little icon, and then hit download screen. And so as I'm looking through these, there's a few things that I'm thinking through. Primary, secondary colors, strategic color accents, what's the information presentation, the density of the information they're displaying, and how do they kind of progressively reveal that information to users? Are there specific onboarding workflows that I'm thinking my app might have? How does the app use spacing? How does it make me feel, right? Just looking at it. Like, for example, this one doesn't really make me feel much, but if I look at some of these other apps, they're kind of giving off a very specific vibe for me. So one that I popped open that I liked is this Phantom crypto wallet. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come through here and I'm going to just download a few of these screens. So I like that one. I do like this splash screen design with a base background color and a little logo there. I like that. I like some of the use of these gradients. So I'm just going to come through again and I'm just going to download some of these screens. Okay, so I think I downloaded about 5 of them there. So really the last step now in this first step is that we want to tell Claude or whatever language model that we're using to take this information and analyze it and use what it sees to build out a style guide. But we're going to do that in a very specific way. So here's the first prompt that we're going to use in order to make that happen. So we're telling it that it's an expert UI designer. And the thing that's interesting about this is we're going to tell it that before it responds, we want it to wrap its thought process in tags, okay? So I don't just want the output. I actually want its kind of meta-analysis of what it's thinking about before it goes in and does this. And the reason I do that is so that I get this description of what it sees the app as. And we're going to see exactly what I mean by that in a second. So we give it that prompt, and then we have an example of what one of these outputs actually looks like, okay? And then important, make sure you attach those images you just downloaded. So you're gonna copy that entire thing. We're gonna pop over into Claude, and then we can see I already populated this in there. So I downloaded a few of those images, and then I just plopped in this prompt, exact same prompt, and then I give it an output format, and I say you can add or subtract from this if you want to. Now what this is doing is it's codifying this style guide. What does it mean to design something in the style of our app? So we go through primary colors, secondary colors, accents, functional colors like successes and errors and warnings and all of that, background colors, typography, right, font weights, the text style, body text, special text, different component styling for shared components, icons, how spacing is going to be used, all of that type of stuff. And then again, we wrap it in this pondering tag, and you can see why it did that, because it's providing a really in-depth analysis outside of just giving me the tokens for our system. It's going to actually tell us what it thought about the app. So for example, app uses sophisticated dark theme, which is very common in blah, 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 blah. Strong emphasis on gradients and modern visual effects. Typography is clear and modern. UX philosophy. It feels like it's designed for both crypto newcomers and power users. The interface is clean enough not to intimidate, but has enough depth and information density for experienced traders. The dark theme with bright accents creates a sense of sophistication and it being cutting edge, right? And so kind of taking this, and then we have it build out a design system based on what it saw, okay? So it's just giving a design system for that specific app. Now, the next thing that we are going to do is obviously what we want to do is we want to take our idea for an app and now fuse it with this. Say, hey, take everything that you did there. This is going to serve as inspiration for our app. And so the way we do that is we have this next prompt called an MVP generator. Now, if you've watched my other videos, you've seen this prompt before because we use it to build our initial ideas out for our app. And so we're just going to copy this prompt. All of these prompts, by the way, are available for free inside of the school group link below the video. We're going to copy this prompt. We're going to pop back over into Claude, and we're actually going to create a new chat. And so we can see where I already pasted this in, right? So it's the exact same prompt. And then all we're doing is we're filling in the idea. Okay, what's our primary idea for this app? And then what is the MVP for this app? And so for this example, I want to create an app that a user can put on their phone to lock themselves out of specific apps, mostly social media apps like Instagram. The intention is for it to be for productivity. The thing that's going to make it kind of unique is that in order to unlock the locked apps, they're going to have to basically do self-development work. So if you're saying, hey, I want to be locked out of Instagram between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., and now it's 3 p.m. and I'm trying to get into it, I have to go through something educational is my first idea, or watch a sponsored video. I'm thinking like that's a way you could monetize it. But I really like this component where they have to actually do something valuable for themselves. And then we're saying, what is the basic idea of the MVP? So they sign up, they select the apps that they want to ban. Any attempt to open that app locks them out. If they want to access that app, they need to go into the app and specifically say, hey, I want to unfocus right now. They can choose the amount of time that they want to allow themselves access. And then in order to unlock it again, they have to do something additional. I have a few different thoughts on how that could be. Again, they have to solve some sort of puzzle. They have to watch like sponsored videos, or maybe they just have to pay. It's like, okay, you really want into Instagram that bad? You got to pay $5. So a few different things that I'm thinking. And so this is basically going to output us a very, very, very basic kind of like pitch of this app. So we get our elevator pitch, the main problem statement, the primary audience, so young professionals struggling with productivity. Secondarily, students, maybe people like in college that are trying to study for tests. And then it said tertiary, parents wanting to model better digital habits for their children. I'm going to kind of cut that one out. That's not what I'm thinking of here. And then the USP, which is this like, hey, you have to actually do something value adding if you want to get back in outside of the window you had specified. And then it's going to give us like some core features, right? So you got to be able to block, you got to be able to unlock, account settings, few other different things. So we're going to go back in to that prompt we had, okay? And now we can see when we scroll down, we have where I had pasted this in. So I basically copied that entire output over, and I just updated a few pieces of it. You can see that like I cut off some of the pieces at the end. You could also probably cut out these non-functional requirements. They don't need to be in here. I didn't cut that out for this, but you probably should do that. And then the last piece, so we paste all of this in. Important, update it with your actual app info. And then we have this last little, I call it a fuser or fuser prompt that we're going to put in there. So fuse your pondering analysis with the app idea below and then wrap your thoughts in pontificating tags. After you're done, output an updated style guide based on the app below. And then the app below is just this pasted in, okay? And so let's see what we're getting here, right? So productivity app, fundamentally different from that wallet app, but equally sophisticated in its approach to user psychology, where Phantom needs to feel cutting edge and crypto native, Focus Lock needs to embody focus, mindfulness, and intentional design. The core challenge is creating visual language that reinforces that app's purpose. Calming and focused, not overstimulating. Second, authoritative but not oppressive. We don't want people to feel like we're criticizing them for trying to go into that app. We're trying to feel supportive for them. Should be reward-oriented where possible, so we should be celebrating the time spent not in that app. And then mindfulness, right? So kind of the whole intent behind this is being more mindful with time. And so that should be part of the core psychology and design of the app. So then again, it starts to get into the color psychology, right? So colors should promote focus and calm and thoughtfulness. How should the typography be? How should interaction with the app be when it comes down to things like animations, for example? Visual hierarchy of how information's presented. And then if I was to target young professionals and students, how does the app need to feel, right? Modern, aspirational, something that it's like cool for them to have on their phone. Doesn't feel dated. So it goes through all of that, and then it builds us out a design system. So primary color, secondary accents, right? It's following that exact same thing that we had earlier. Okay, and then it even goes into brainstorming specific things like, hey, if we're going to visualize data, these are some components you should think about, things like that. So in less than 5 minutes, we've got a really solid visual DNA for this app. And what this really means is now we have a very concrete, professional framework of design that we can keep our app accountable to. And this is the first major milestone in eliminating guesswork, eliminating the unpredictability of those outputs that we get. Now, step 2, we want to fuse that visual DNA with our actual app. Now, one of the hidden secrets here that I've found is that you tend to get much better designs out of these systems when you don't ask it to also build the functionality behind the feature at the same time. When you have the language model fully focused on the design aspect of the work it's performing. That means I don't want it to actually build a functional graph that's pulling in real data. I want it to mock up what the design of a graph, for example, might look like. This is how you get predictably beautiful designs each time that actually have detail in them. A big drawback of traditional vibe coding hands-off tools is that they tend to forget details. They tend to miss out on details. They're too focused on architecting something that actually works on like a one-shot basis, that there's not a lot of detail in the designs that you get out of them. And so the theory behind this is if we focused all that language model processing power not on architecting something that is functionally working, but rather something that looks really nice, looks a specific way, using all of that token bandwidth to actually go into solving this design problem, that will get better outputs because of it. So let's look at how this process works. So here's the actual prompt that we're going to be using. So I'm going to go through the template and then I'm going to go back and show the filled in version of the template. So we start with the goal filled in. Okay, so we're just telling it like, hey, this is a UI exercise. We give it some different guidelines. So what do we want to generally accomplish with the aesthetics of this app? I like to break down some practicalities. So specifically what I'm saying is anytime you're using icons, I want you to use this library. We're using Tailwind for our CSS and our styling. And then we're going to be simulating iPhone frames. So I want this to actually look like different app screens mocked up. So I'm having it actually simulate each of these screens in an iPhone screen, and we're going to see what that looks like in a second. If there are any very specific app guidelines that you think it needs to know that haven't been included, you can put those in there. Then we're going to give an overview of our app. This is where we're actually just going to paste in that MVP generator that we had done. And then this last section, we're going to go through and we're going to tell it what screens we want made, okay? And so we can look at what that looks like filled in. So we can see this is all the same. This is all the same. Okay, we added this little section in. Hey, remember it's a design exercise. We add in our style guide. Okay, so that style guide that we pulled out, again, this was the last output that we got. I just copied it. I literally just copied the entire output and pasted it in here, saying this is our design system. And then we have our app overview, right? The elevator pitch all the way down. And again, I cut out some of the things that I didn't want in there. So for example, I didn't want that like tertiary audience of, hey, it's for parents to lock their kids out of apps. So I removed that. So I just dialed this in a tiny bit based on what I wanted to see. So here's our task. We want you to follow the guidelines above to ensure correctness. Okay, so follow everything above. And then your output should be a bunch of screens basically going horizontally. And we'll see what that looks like in 1 second. Now here's the thing that's cool. For each problem, we want it to brainstorm 3 different solutions to that problem. 3 different solutions. So if the problem was the user onboarding, how to do the user onboarding properly and allow someone to onboard and select the apps they want to block, show me 3 different unique solutions to solving that specific problem. Don't just build the first one. I want to see different takes on that problem solution. Each angle should be unique, but it should still conform to the overall UX UI parameters of the app. And then this is where we're going to go through and we're going to tell them what section we want them brainstorming. And so we're going to look at this in 1 second. But for example, when a user has run out of free emergency unlocks, the only way they can unlock is to withdraw money from their account. So I'm thinking like, okay, you start off the app where you preload like 25 bucks in there. And every time you want to unlock the app during the time that you said you didn't want to, you have to pay $5. I don't know. Sounds legit to me. What would that look like though, right? There's a lot of different ways that UI could come to be. And so let's look at what that would be for the user. Let's get some different takes on that. Now, what do we actually do with this? Now, the way that I like to do this kind of design exercise is that I like to use a vanilla create React app, right? Vanilla create React app. And then I just tell it to use Tailwind and React Lucid for the icons. So I will literally come in here and say that and say, create me a basic create React app using Tailwind and React Lucid. I'm going to hit enter on that and I'm going to let it go and just install all of this into the project and configure in the project. Now I've already done that, which is why you see all of this here, but this is the first step. Now after we've done that, all we're going to do is we're going to copy that entire prompt that we had. We're going to pop back into Cursor and we are just going to paste that in there, hit enter, and we're going to let it fly. Now, while that was off screen, I went through and I actually did this exercise for a few different features. So we're going to see a few different rows pop up on the screen. So I did some analytic stuff. I did some onboarding stuff like emergency unlock screens. But the way that I have this prompt configured is that every screen, right? So think of like every iPhone screenshot of our app goes into its own file. That way, if we need to edit that one specifically, it's really well scoped and we don't get these huge files with these huge context windows when we're trying to update things later. So are you ready to check out what we made? Boom! And wow, pretty nice designs out of the box. So we have like a basic splash screen here. What an upgrade to the premium version might do with a nice little pulsing icon there. An example of an emergency unlock screen. Here we have an example of like what a focusing schedule might actually look like. Now, obviously this would be on a phone, so this scroll bar wouldn't be here, but a nice little UI for what focus sessions would look like and apps that we're attempting to block during that focus time. So maybe like we have a 9 to 12 block, which is active every day. Hey, there's 2 hours left on it. This is what we're blocking. And if I were to try to hit end session, this is what would trigger like one of those emergency unlocks, for example. So that's pretty cool. Your progress, I'm not like a hugest fan of what they did up here, but again, I think this is because it's rendering, a mobile phone basically in the browser. So this styling will be a little bit more compact. So if that's the case, kind of like how it's doing like the daily progress, the streaks, has different achievements in there. Pretty cool. Here's what it would look like if we wanted to configure blocks. I think this looks really nice actually. All the different ways we can do this, starting a focus session. Really pretty nice. And then we get down to that section where I was telling you where we were brainstorming different approaches to the app, right? So for example, this one was, hey, how do we demonstrate the positive impact we're having on users in terms of like the time that they're saving? What's the benefit of the app? And it brainstormed 3 different ways that we could show that to the user, right? So it could be, what does their growth journey look like? Longest focus streak, 47 days, how many hours they blocked, I thought this was pretty cool, how many books worth of time that is. Okay, then they have this little chart that's not rendering right now, but we would have a chart there telling them like if they're improving and then what their milestones actually look like. So first step, week 1, habit former. So this is like a pretty cool idea where it's like a timeline of your personal journey. Then we have this community stat focused one, which is pretty cool. We could gamify it and make it like a leaderboard type thing to see who's best at blocking themselves out of apps. I probably won't go with this one, but I do like how it thought about doing that, and I do like how it's displaying these achievements like this. I like the styling of that one. And then I thought this is cool. It like kind of can programmatically create challenges for the user. And then we have time reclaimed. I really like this one too, like the impact this is actually having on your life, how many hours per day on average you are saving, and how many full work days over the course of like a year that equates to. It's kind of crazy. And then it has these little like analogs of like, it's this many workout sessions, it's this much quality time with friends, it's this much time you could have spent learning. I really like this one actually. So this was an example of showing the app's benefits to people. And then we have 3 different approaches to that emergency unlock paywall. This is the one we actually started with. So this was the first one, and then I went through and was experimenting and adding in all those other sections. And so these are 3 different ways that we could handle that $5 unlock, okay? And now this is a big reason why we do that, like, hey, give me 3 different angles, because we're gonna see how meaningfully different these things actually are from one another. So the first one is like a mindfulness-based paywall. And so we say, hey, you've already used your free emergency unlock for this month. Let's pause and reflect before we open up this app. Why do you want to unlock it right now? Right? Oh, I'm just bored. Okay. Choose a question to reflect on for 30 seconds. How will I feel? Right? A lot of us, when we're done doom scrolling, we feel like shit, right? So maybe that's an important thing to reflect on, right? And then a gentle reminder. Unlocking this now means, I wouldn't say investing in this context from like a copywriting perspective, because it's not an investment, right? An investment is something that's positively focused. So I would say right now means spending $5 in this moment. Is this the best use of your focus fund? I like how they called it a focus fund. Remember that every unlock is a choice between immediate gratification and your long-term goals. So I do kind of like this one, and then it gives you some alternate ideas, and then it has a little style for choosing what you want to do. But then we can see this one's a lot harsher, right? This one's a lot more focused on like, hey, you're kind of screwing yourself financially. Look at the total cost of everything you're doing. Like, oh my God, is this really worth it to you? Now, I don't like this one because I think it could accidentally deter someone from even wanting to use the app, right? Where they see this more as like, oh my God, this app's costing me this much. It's going to cost me this much every other day, right? As opposed to this being something that's focused on them. This is now focused on something that could be seen as it's just taking from them unnecessarily. And then we have this challenge mode, which I really like, which is like, how can we turn this and reframe it into a focus, right? And so maybe there's like community challenges. And so it's like, hey, instead of paying right now, how about we double or nothing? I think this is actually really cool too, the way that they did this. So overall, pretty happy with a lot of these screens. I did like this premium upgrade one. I might do something with this one down here, but the top piece of it I really liked. I really like this block configuration. I might go and update these 2 screens to match this style and design more closely. I like how it brainstormed these 3 different approaches to app benefits. I like how it did the different paywalls. And so basically what I would do is I would go and repeat this process iteratively for all of the major features and screens of my app. So stunning designs, and simply because we gave it a professional UI to model off of, we had it describe what that UI actually means qualitatively, and then we had it build it into a concrete token-based design system. And when you take those 2 worlds together and fuse it with our actual app inspiration, we get a pretty awesome output. Again, professional inspiration, clear principles, and focused effort behind the UI design. That is the power of this visual fusion system. So the biggest takeaway today is this. Stop asking the language models to be creative geniuses. Instead, give it professional inspiration and codify that inspiration into something it can follow as a process. Do that and you will get pro-level results every time. That's why I firmly hold the position that we will always need humans. We will always need professional designers. We will always need professional engineers. Creativity and productive achievement is what makes humanity great. So let's learn to leverage that not seek to replace it mindlessly. So now that you can design a stunning UI, it's time to turn it into an actual full stack application. To do that, check out the video linked at the end of this video where I show how this fits into an overarching 8-step vibe coding process that has a complete front end and back end. And before I forget, I would really love to see what designs and what apps you guys are building, so feel free to drop those below in the comments. Drop a link to your favorite Mobbin app that you're going to try to emulate. Or drop a link to an app that you've actually built using some of these systems that I show you guys in the video. I'd love to see that stuff. But that is it for this video. I will catch you in the next one.